You are listening to the Beyond the High Road podcast with Shelby Milford, episode number 92. Stay tuned. Well, hello, you guys. How are we doing today on this July 3rd? I am recording on the same day I'm going to release it because, there's like a little excitement in my life. Since Sunday, I had been contemplating what topic I wanted to tackle this week. I have a running list of topic ideas. So it's not that I've run out of topics by a long shot, no way. But I have a harder time doing the editing later if I don't have a story, some sort of inspiration behind it. So anyway, this morning I am looking, I don't know what made me do it, but I was looking at my phone. There were so many apps. I'm running out of space on my phone. And I started deleting old apps. They were like torrent apps. It brought me back to a place during the dark times when I lived in such scarcity thinking, such scarcity in my life. There was no abundance because I was not feeling abundant. I felt paranoid and stuck, frozen. I was running on fear and fear alone, pretty much. Fear, heartbreak, scarcity, which is fear, bewilderment, confusion. It was a very dark time for me. So I started going through these apps and I was deleting. And I then also came across this writing app that I used back in the day. And it's where I journaled. It's where I also put, for my lawyer, I put the timelines of when things happened, incidents that occurred between me and the stepmom and what have you. And then, of course, with my daughter's father. Anyway, you get it. And so I thought that today, coming off of the last two episodes where we were talking about moving from fear into purpose, right? And the episode before that, where we were talking about being in fear and fear alone, right? Being in that free state, extended, prolonged, functional, maybe not so functional free state. I thought that I would share a couple excerpts from two or three different pieces of writing from that app that I found, then elaborate on it afterwards. I wanted to do this for two reasons. One, because, after so long we say things and you've just been repeating them for so long, you actually don't even think about how real they really were. And the things that I've kind of mentioned to you over time, this was me writing about it in the moment. So it might be interesting to hear my tone from back then for you guys, because I think sometimes it might be easy to listen to these episodes and think she's different. Maybe she started at a different place. She had more resources, more whatever. Maybe she was already down this path before when all this, the alienation started for her. So of course it's easy for her. If there's any inkling of that in your mind, maybe this will help a little bit anyway. When I wrote these, it was right on that cusp. I knew I needed more. I knew I needed help managing my mind. And you'll hear that here. But just anyway. So I'm going to read the first one. And the first one is a recollection, maybe a year later, of this time with my daughter. My daughter came to me one Thursday afternoon and told me that the next day was Pioneer Day at school. They were to dress up as pilgrims and would be having an event that morning. Oh my gosh, tomorrow, Scarlett? I asked, half panicking. Stressed or not, I was more than happy to do it for her, being that I already shared so many responsibilities with somebody else. And that someone else had no interest in working as a team or even communicating for my daughter's sake, which is, of course, why I hadn't heard about this event sooner. I felt honored to make my daughter's extras for school. In the years before, while packing her lunch, I would use cookie cutters to make her sandwiches into cute shapes. One winter day, while placing a drop of red food dye on the tip of her sandwich to signify Rudolph's nose, I thought, this can't be good for her. So from then on, I began drawing on the outside of my daughter's sandwich bags. It started with simple little snowmen, and 2 years later, I was drawing Katy Perry, Willie Nelson, and Elsa from Frozen. It was loads of fun, and it was a great way to help sink in the little things she was learning also. For a brownies field trip, we were headed to the fire station. So that morning, I drew a little girl in a fireman's uniform to remind her. When she began reading, I'd draw little conversation bubbles above the sketched Littlest Pet Shop characters who were asking her to eat all of her sandwich before delving into the cookies I hid under the bag of apples. For the following day, I borrowed my neighbor's sewing machine and got to work. She needed to look like a pilgrim, maybe a bonnet or a long skirt, she said, with some leftover material I had from some pillows I never finished. Imagine that. I decided to make her a long apron and a bonnet, both with big old colorful bows, which clearly didn't fall in line with the muted colors worn back in the 1800s, but it looked so dang cute. The next morning, I dropped her off at school and decided to hang out in nearby Starbucks until the square dance at 10 a.m. Parents were welcome to attend, and I was excited to be there for her. I walked into the gymnasium around 9:50 and decided to sit on the bleachers to wait. Other parents began to trickle in, and soon Scarlett and the rest of her class filed in also. There were about 6 classrooms in all, along with their choreographed square dance. This was an opportunity for all the kiddos to group teach their parents as well. When they announced for moms and dads to join in, I started over to Scarlett, and then I saw a blur. Her stepmother swooped in, not more than 2 feet from me. She grabbed my daughter by the arm and pulled her to the floor. I was shocked. My eyes saucers, my jaw to the floor. I watched her smirk and loudly snark, "You can have her after my turn." I swear my jaw was still on the floor when I looked over at Miss Halpern, my daughter's teacher, to see if it was real. Was anyone else reacting to this, or was I just having a daymare? As I've explained, I'm not a confrontational person. Plot me in the middle of a head-to-head competition and I am out. By nature, I freeze. Now, we all know that it's not really by nature. It just happened to be that I was in that extended freeze state, right? On the inside, though, I was ready to blow a fucking gasket. Not only was it my day with Scarlett per the custody agreement, but I just made her this cute little outfit and I watched her stepmom tie the bow on her as if she was claiming it to be her own. I stood there in the middle of the floor, dumbfounded and, well, feeling dumb. The children and their parents began to dance all around me. Not wanting to make any sort of scene for Scarlett, I slinked off to the bleachers. Her teacher glanced over and quietly mouthed, "I'm so sorry this is happening to you." The stepmom made overly big gestures while doing her dance and did not let go of my daughter for the entire event. I quietly left, praying that miraculously this would not be a memory that stuck for my daughter. My heart ached inside. My stomach did flips. I hated that this was happening. I hated it for me because it felt so incredibly dark and ugly, but mostly I hated it for my daughter. The fact that my sweet little girl was being made to choose, that she had to feel that unnecessary and twisted tension created over her, it made me sick. I'd obviously seen her in actions many times before, I'm talking about the stepmother, but to witness her act this way at a school event was just unbelievable. Soul-crushing, really. Which I don't know why I'm so surprised looking back on this now. I don't know why I'm so surprised because there were so many other school events starting from when she started school, right, in kindergarten, where she did such similar things to this. She would make a huge scene in an even more confined space like my daughter's kindergarten room and first grade room, you know? Anyway, so what stood out to me for this one is that I think we all, as alienated parents, have done this. We have sacrificed and kept quiet in order to hopefully save our children so that we didn't make a scene in front of them. You know, just like I said, praying to God that this memory didn't stick for her. That is all that mattered to me. When I was on those bleachers that day, or before I was on those bleachers and I was standing there getting ready to go do this silly little square dance with my daughter, and as I saw the blur and her swoop Scarlett up and the look on the stepmom's face, she was like, "You can have her after I'm finished." It felt so evil and dark to me. I was so appalled. I was frozen. I was truly frozen. I did not know how to act because who does this, right? That's where I was. What adult behaves this way? Whenever the stepmom came into the picture and I didn't know who she was and I knew nothing about her really, I was convinced she must not have had a kid ever, because having a kid, she would know that there's like a code, right? You don't do that with someone else's kid. You don't cut someone else's kid's hair, their bangs, when they've never had their bangs cut. Coming to find out that she did have a child, and most people don't do those things. But there are those people, my daughter's stepmom, who does do those things. But I did not know how to respond to it. And I think so many of us can relate to this, especially if there's a stepmom, I'm going to generalize here, but I'm pretty sure I'm accurate on this, in the picture who was actively working to alienate. I know that you understand this. And even if there's not a step parent in the picture, moms and dads alike will behave this way with the kids. When they're doing the acts to alienate, they're not operating on the same principles that we would like other people to. So anyway, I thought it was important to point out, if you're in it actively right now, the one thing, if I could go back, and I'm sure I've shared this with you at some point or another, but I want to stress this, that if I could go back and change anything today, right, it would definitely be my reactions in those moments. I would speak up. I would not worry so much about how it might affect my daughter if I stood up for myself and for her. Back then, I felt like I didn't want to make a peep. I didn't want to make a sound because I didn't want to be the one causing the scene or contributing to the dysfunction. But when it comes to situations like ours, speaking up, knowing your worth, you absolutely have the right and the responsibility, really, to stand up for what you believe for yourself and for your kiddo. I'm not saying that you need to fight the other people back, but you can certainly fight for your child. Of course, hindsight's 2020, because I know now too that I did not know my own worth back then. We're all worthy. We don't gain our worth any time. Like, you are so worthy right now as you listen to me, right? Or watch, whatever you're doing. There is nothing that can make you more worthy. And if I knew that then, like truly knew it, then I probably would have stood up for myself more. I didn't trust what I was thinking and observing was actually happening, or that my judgment was on point, you know? And so I wanted to keep quiet. And I was, because of the discord, I am sure you guys understand this and relate to this. And I think this is what all of us as alienated parents do. We all think like, oh God, please, I just don't want to add to the situation, which is a healthy way, I think, to approach pretty much any other situation besides something like alienation. You know, pick your battles and just walk away from somebody that's acting not appropriately, dysfunctionally. But when it comes to our children, I think if I could offer anything today, it would be to stand up. Stand up. Don't sit quiet. Don't tell yourself, don't believe the story that it's going to get better later, that if you just stay quiet for long enough, they'll stop. Your children will see that you are the sane one. I would today say that there is definitely a way. It doesn't have to be so black or white. You can actually stand, like, in your power, stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself and your child in an effective way, in a powerful or empowered way, without having to add to the dysfunction. You know what I'm saying? There is an in-between. I think we think that if we say something that we're just going to be at their level, and that's not true. It doesn't have to be like that. Like in this situation, for me, I could imagine that today, if that happened, I would absolutely stand in between and say, hi, this is actually, now I'm going to take my daughter and spend some time with her here. It doesn't have to be yelling. It doesn't have to be screaming. It doesn't have to go stoop to anybody's level. There is a way to act on the behalf and the best interest of our children without doing that. Anyway, okay. So that's what I wanted to take away from that. I just thought that maybe some of you guys, many of you guys would identify with that. I know that we will all face situations again where we need to advocate for ourselves and maybe still our children, you know? And so this time, just remind yourself that you may feel scared at the moment, but it's going to be okay. And that so long as you are acting coming from a place of love and kindness, even in being firm and convicted in what you want to say, that you cannot go wrong. So anyway, okay. So the next one is, I actually have the call recording of this, but this was from right directly after a group coaching call I had. So I would move over to the house on the hill, and I had joined this group coaching program, which really, really helped me. And I was in that group coaching program for like 4 years. I joined it because at the time I couldn't afford the school, which I later actually went to, which is the life coach school. But I joined this group coaching program because it was very affordable and I could get coached by someone weekly. Now, I wasn't the same someone every week, so I found it to be more difficult in the long run to get any real work done, one-on-one coaching. So this was probably month 3 after joining that program. And this was on the group call, not the one-on-one coaching. So this is like where hundreds of other people were on the calls, like listening. Okay. I submitted a very last minute request to be coached. I was driving home from a workout with my buddy Mark and decided to pull over just in case. I couldn't believe it when she called my name. In the request form, she asked you to write a short description of the topic you'd like to discuss. I thought this was great, as I have a very hard time trying to describe my situation without getting off on tangents. This is such an overwhelming amount of baggage to unpack with respect to parental alienation. Surprisingly, she didn't get past the words parental alienation without having to stop and ask. It helped me realize just how uninformed the general public, let alone the self-help community, really is about this fucking awful epidemic. I mean, as much suffering as we go through, you'd think that it would be a catalyst for targeted parents like me to get coaching. Anyway, my desire was not just to complain about my unfortunate situation, but to ask how I could crawl out of my victim mentality with regard to it all. In my eyes, no matter how shitty they've been to me, and no matter how angry I am at them for brainwashing my sweet child, those thoughts do nothing for me. So I wanted to know how I could rework my thoughts in order to serve me. This is when I started, I'm like listening to the words that I'm using, and it was words that I was just then adopting. I know that. I wanted a magical answer that would enable me to get out of my head, off my couch, and out of this prison I'd been sentenced to. I wanted to be equipped with a new mindset so that I could shake this hell off me and begin living my life again. But when I opened my mouth, I panicked. There was so much to say. I needed to paint a clear picture so that we could get to work. There were so many examples to share and so much information in my brain that I was at a loss for words. I began to cry, and it didn't stop. My coach: what are your thoughts when you think about her? Me: I think about what a genuinely sweet soul she is. I'm so sad for her. I feel guilty for not being able to protect her. And the tears kept falling. Coach: what are your thoughts about you? Me: I'm a devoted mom, a loving, great mom. And I hate myself for not being able to stop this. And so I stopped writing about the dialogue right there because I said, I just want to know how I can manage my thoughts so that I'm not the forever victim. And I said, I'd have to watch the tape for the rest. After watching the recording, this was maybe an hour later, what I gather is I need to still sit with the feelings. Apparently, I haven't fully processed. I need to talk about it a lot. Then, once I've done this, I need to look at what I can do, what I am in control of. I need a coach. I mean, not just any coach once a week. I need a designated coach who can work with me regarding all of this. One who will know me in my situation, hold me accountable, and help me develop. Here I sit, one day turning into another, one week into the next. Months go by with no substantial change. Something in my head just isn't clicking. I don't stay on the ball. My purpose, when I'm focused enough to have one, changes by the minute, sometimes by the second. I'm realizing as I'm writing that I'm placing all of the importance on outside elements to determine my direction. But isn't that what you do as a parent? Your children are your number one priority, right? This whole time, waiting on a court date, years pass. I wait because I depend on others to pay or file motions or recommend, assess, counsel, and make judgment. I don't know how else to combat this. Never give up, right? But in my fighting, is relying on others working? My eyes are heavy to the extent that naps are vital. While I drive, I feel the need to close my eyes. Yesterday, I had my first appointment at Texas Oncology. I met with the hematologist as I'd become anemic. Symptoms began almost 2 years ago. Extreme burning pain on a toe on my right foot, which lasted about 4 months. It subsided and returned again last fall. This time, the painful 4-month stint ended up with a sudden pool of blood that sat underneath the skin of that same toe. Many symptoms and blood tests later, I found myself sitting in the waiting room at ARC on my 45th birthday, right ankle blown up like a balloon, tingling down my left arm, with yet another doctor trying to treat the symptoms individually. Today, while I was sitting in my car watching a YouTube video in the parking lot of Home Depot, this is another freeze response, by the way, is sitting in your car with really, you've got things to do, but you just don't want to get out yet. So you will numb out in your car or like in your towel out of the shower, not wanting to go to move to the next task So while I was sitting in my car watching a YouTube video, a cloud covered the sun, creating a slight shadow. I jumped, heart leapt, completely startled, thinking the shadow was someone outside my window. It happens frequently, yet I've not experienced anything that would prompt reactions like this before. They say that traumatic events can cause PTSD, yet I never thought that anything short of being on the front lines of war warranted anyone the permission to have it. The thing about traumatic events is, well, they're events. Events have clear beginnings, middles, and endings. The trauma of losing a child to death has got to be a wretched one. No parent should ever outlive their child. I witnessed my mother mourn the death of my brother, her only son. Oh God, my heart still breaks for her a little each time I imagine her visiting his grave, which she does almost daily. Those same people, I assume, also say that losing a child to alienation is not unlike grieving their death. To that I say, I guess so. Similar in that there was a day that their children were there and then they weren't. There is the coping with the loss. There is definitely a mourning. The thing is, by no means am I downplaying an actual death. When a child dies, there is an ending to their daily existence on this planet. Nowhere could someone be watching a movie or driving a car with their child. Although there are ongoing feelings related to their death, there's an opportunity for closure. Death is an event. Every day I wake up knowing that my child is calling some other woman mom while she is getting herself ready for school gymnastics. My child is experiencing her first day in 8th grade, her first crush, her first period. She's out there coping during the most impressionable time in her life, having been forced into denying who she is in her core. Every day she's making decisions based on what someone else is modeling to her. Her model of life is skewed, as she has not been allowed to exercise her God-given right to love and be loved by both of her parents. When I say that it is skewed, I am not making judgment. Instead, it is an observation. What I mean is, the most basic of all rights given to us at birth is that we have a father and mother that made each of us. Who they are is no mistake. As infants, as toddlers, as tweens, teens, and young adults, our parents are intended to shape us, mold us, and then watch us grow as a result of their work. When that right is taken from a child, it is a violation. When that right is taken from a capable and willing parent, well, that is wretched. I think the sting of a death dulls after some time. The parent knowing that their child is safe, at peace, and maybe even watching over them is probably a comfort. There's not a moment in time when I'm not 2 seconds away from tears. Just the thought of not being able to kiss her forehead goodnight always presents the risk of breaking down. The pain is never ending and never dulls. Knowing that she could be down the street from me and not being able to call her, email her, or wave hello for fuck's sakes is devastating. That pit in my gut when something reminds me of a phrase she often said or a look she would give. I can't say the words, "Where is she?" without afterwards reciting them in a high-pitched toddler voice. "Where is she?" Shoulders shrugged, palms up, eyes wide in wonderment, and head cocked, the way that my daughter did when she referred to my friend Katie, or Kitty, as my daughter would call her. I hear the children giggling and screaming with excitement on Halloween, marching down the sidewalk in their cute little costumes on, and I cry. My entire body is overcome with a jarring buzz. And then I stopped there. So I guess I thought it might be helpful for you guys to hear the words that, and me, like, when I was writing those words, being really still very much in it and feeling very much a victim and knowing that I was there, right? I was at the point where I knew that I was a victim and I knew I wanted more, but I hadn't yet gotten to the more yet. I had just been told by who would later be my mentor and teacher going forward that I really needed to actually process the emotions. Yes, I was feeling them, but I was feeling the suffering on top of the core emotions, right? I was hemming and hawing and I was moving from fight, flight, freeze, and then I would go back and swing through these 3 phases. And so being in that trauma response, it is difficult to get to the core emotions because your body is in that your nervous system is in that emergency state. So at the time, you cannot actually sit with your emotions, or you think that you cannot sit with your emotions because you're too busy trying to stop freaking out. And also, I pointed out there too, I think I said, as I'm writing this, I'm realizing that I would always base my purpose on things that were outside of me. I would let the things that were outside of me determine my direction. And so it makes sense also too, for so many reasons, why I said that my purpose changed like by the minute. It just constantly was changing over because it just depended on what reaction I was trying to get from somebody else at the time, where I was prioritizing my needs at the time. At the time, I was looking not inside, but I needed other people to change in order for things to start to get better. But I also knew that I hated living that way. For so long, too, I was thinking about this while in the shower, but that I was always looking to have somebody to explain my life and why I was the way I was. Oh, I'm this way because my dad wasn't consistently present. I was this way because my mom was micromanaging and weird in her other ways. I was this way because of my brother. I wanted to look outside of me to explain why I was who I was and why I behaved the way that I behaved back then. But I realized that it wasn't so much about who did what. It was everything, how my body, how I responded to it in all those times. Like I realized from the time I was little, since whatever happened with my brother, I spent a lot of time in that freeze state as a child. And then freeze, fawn a little bit because with my mom, it was necessary for me at the time. So I would be freeze, fawn. And then when I got into adulthood with my daughter's father, I would fight. I would fight, freeze. There was no fawn with him. And then with the last guy, it was fawn, freeze. Now that I know that, I am capable, I am able to see my own patterns and how I'm choosing people moving forward. Like, it makes sense that even though those two guys were nothing alike, like they weren't in most ways, both narcissist type traits, right? Characteristics, behaved entirely differently. And I chose differently on purpose, thinking that I was choosing up, if you will. But really, I was actually choosing someone who caused me to go back into a familiar state back from when I was a kid. So with the last guy, the Byron guy, I was so used to fawn because I did fawn when I was a kid with my mom. So the role that I played in fawn felt familiar. It wasn't comfortable by any means, but it felt familiar. I knew how to do that, right? And so, of course, that's why I picked this guy. I wanted it to be different than the last guy, than my daughter's father. And it was. It just happened to not be actually different for me. Does that make sense? So it's like the people outside of us don't so much matter, but why it is that we're choosing them. So I think that that's just another takeaway. I know that this is kind of a mishmash of topics today. Hopefully it'll be helpful for you guys going forward. I think summertime is like, just for me, has always been a tough one. And I know it's not summertime for everybody that's listening, because if you're down in Australia, which there's plenty of listeners from Australia and just from south of the equator, or South Africa, I know it's winter there, but these summer months for me, they were once like the best months for my daughter and I. I loved our vacation times. I just got to spend more time with her, and I loved that. Spring break as well. And then when the alienation started and really took hold, then what did I have on my hands? Idle time. And I didn't know what to do with myself. My skin was crawling. I was so unhappy and unsettled and felt victimized. And I felt like I was sharing with you in these little writings, that I felt like I was constantly waiting on other people to do their job so that I could get back to being a mom. I just felt so helpless, and I wasn't aware of how I could act on my own behalf or for my daughter in the best possible way, even while waiting on these people. Sometimes that just is our reality. There's time lapses. During these summer months, when you're used to pining away for your kids, it might be helpful, in light of what I just shared with you in these readings, that might be really helpful for you to get right with your own thoughts. If you are in a freeze state, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it and move yourself from it so that you can actually process through the emotions that you've been sort of numbing and hiding yourself from. The best thing that you can do for yourself in this time, use this time wisely, and talk. talk with the people that you love, that you trust, that love you. Talk about what's happened. Talk about the things that you have been keeping quiet. Just as I shared with you here that every time I went to talk about it back then, I got all jumbled up and just I felt so nervous. I would sweat. I would start crying. There were so many different scenarios that were going on. And a lot of that was due to the fact that I hadn't talked about it to anybody. I kept it locked away and hidden. And that is the most unhelpful thing that you can do. We need the connection in people. And another thing that would be really, really helpful to do, and I haven't actually nagged you guys to do this in a while, there's so many benefits to writing down your thoughts in the moment. And like this today was just one more benefit, is that going back to this hidden little gem, this little memory chest of my thoughts back in the day has served me and hopefully some of you guys out there today. But it's always so interesting to see, like in retrospect, how far you've come, where you were at the time. It provides you later on, it will provide you with so much distance, so much perspective. The benefits are so many. When you're writing all of the stuff, you're getting distance from your thoughts in that moment, and you're able to connect with the words in a different way than you were when they're jumbled all up in your head. You process through what's happening. Now here, I will say that when I went to write this stuff, some of this stuff was thoughts and some of it was intentional writing for this exact purpose so that I could look at this stuff later. It was still very informal, but it wasn't, when I'm encouraging you guys to do the writing, I think less organized and less burst, I guess. Don't edit your thoughts. Write down the rawest of raw, because that's where if you're judging yourself and editing out the real thoughts that are going on, the message that you're sending to yourself is that those thoughts aren't worthy, or like there's something to be hidden away, right? So you definitely want to write it all down. And don't judge yourself. You're human. The thoughts that occur to you don't define you and don't determine whether you're a good person or a bad person or whatever. They just are. If they've occurred to you, they come to you while you're writing. Just get them out. Okay? Anyway. All right. So listen, I hope that this helped, y'all. I just wanted to read that stuff to you so that you guys would understand that, I too have been in those, the helpless places, and understand what you guys are going through, but also too that trust the process. Trust this process of healing. And if you feel like you're not where you need to be, you feel like you're not far enough along, or that it's taking too much time, it's too slow, it does always feel like that in the process. Think about when you were a kid and you couldn't wait to get your driver's license, right? And then you got your driver's license and you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Now I have it. No, who cares about the rest of it, right? Or like when you were just wanting to get out of high school, just wanted to get out of your house, like your parents' house. It seems so long during the wait, right? But then you get there and you're like, oh, that was no big deal. It's the same thing with this. Except for with this, it did seem, I can say on the back end of it now, it did seem like a long time in it, because it is the hardest thing that you and I, hopefully, will ever go through. Give yourself some grace. Have compassion for yourself in all of these moments, but you are right where you are supposed to be. Right where you're supposed to be. I promise you that. I had a former client text earlier today. He was questioning whether he was mentally ill or not. He said, I can't seem to anchor myself into anything. My emotions are all over the place. Sadness being the primary emotion. Anger is almost never present. It would be a refreshing change. And he just feels like he's stuck in this sadness and this gloom, doom place, right? And I told him this is just part of his process. But the more he hates on the process, the harder it will become. The more he questions his own character and whether he's crazy or not, the harder this will all become. It's a way for your mind to distract you and put you on to something else. And that something else actually feels worse, but your mind just doesn't understand that. So just trust the process. If you're feeling sad, just let it be sad, but don't have a story about the sadness on top of it that makes it wrong or bad that you are. That's where the suffering is. You are right on track. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. This is a process. So give yourself that grace and give yourself that love in that. kindness, okay? But you're doing perfectly. And it does suck. Recognize the suck. Recognize the pain. This will only bring you along further, faster, even though I'm trying to convince you to not rush it. But it will. The other stuff will actually just deter you, keep you off your path. The hating on the process, the hating on where you are, I should be further along, all of that stuff is only a deterrent. It's a dead end road. It's a trap. And that scarcity mindset that I was mentioning before, just keep trusting. And if you have to like make affirmation for yourself, things are coming to me easily and freely. Things are coming to me without much effort. I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, saying things, simplifying your process and not making it so heavy and scarce and like lacking. We see the world as we are, not as the world is, right? And so remember that it's not all black out there. It's just because of what is going on internally that you're seeing things as scarce or as fear-worthy, all the things that you might be saying. So just keep reminding yourself that this is just a moment in time and there will be more moments. Okay? And talk to all the people, all the time, all your people that you trust. Talk all of this stuff out so that you can make some sense, get some distance from it. The more you talk, each time you talk about it, you let a little bit of it go. But you holding on to it and pushing it down, that's why you feel like I was sharing here. I was like, I don't know. Blah, blah. I was like, throw up with the mouth, all the things. And I just start crying because it's like trying to keep a beach ball underwater. You can't do it. First opportunity you have, it all just bubbles out. And then you walk away from the situation being like, oh my God, what did I just do? I don't even know what I'm saying. Right? So it's very important to let it out. And it is going to be messy. It is. That's why you pick people that you trust and that love you, you love. It's okay if you're a broken record. It's okay. You're going through something pretty massive. They will tell you if they're tired of it. And if they're tired of it, so what? Find somebody else to speak with. It's okay. Allow yourself the privilege. It's not even a privilege, the right, the grace, just to process through it. Just make sure that when you're doing it, that you're not adding to your suffering by only focusing on the way that your life sucks. You want to talk about your reactions, your responses, your emotions as a result of it. And then you try to find your power from there. And if you need more help, then you can always call me, because I always offer a free session to anybody who needs it. And I won't sell you if you don't want to be sold to. So don't worry. I'm not going to try to make you corner you or chase you or bother you to come coach with me. But if you want to feel better, and if you want to, and you can do it. By the way, let me just say that you don't need. I felt like I needed a coach, and it did help immensely. But you don't need to have somebody coach you through this. You can do it by yourself. And also, if you want to have like you want to feel better, like very soon, if you want to speed the process up, if you want more resources and you want to save time, energy, all the things, then that's when you come to me. But I'm not going to chase you down. You can always just schedule a free session with me and get your head on about what you need to do specifically. And then that'll be it. I won't chase you. I won't email you a million times over, spam you. Try to creepily sell you. No, thank you. I've been where you're at. I know, I understand. It's one thing I will never do. And also, if you want the help, I am damn good at providing you with that help. So there you have it. Also, I think that we all go through this. I know some people really hate it when I say this, but I do think that there are benefits that each of us individually get from this. Try to find why this is working for you. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to why is it the best thing that ever happened to you? You could, and I've suggested that probably quite frequently, but there are things that you gain by going through something as traumatic as this. There always is. So focus on those things. Like, what have you developed as a result? The tenacity, the sense of worth. For me, I worked to develop who I am, what I want, my direction, my discipline, all of those things. I gained so much through this process of healing myself following the alienation. And that was all due to me, not because of the alienation. I could have chosen to not do those things, right? I could have chosen to not heal. I don't think the people that are listening to these episodes are choosing that. I think you guys want to heal. That's your doing, right? It's not the alienation's doing. You chose it. It's your mind. It's your life moving forward. So anyway, that's all I have. I don't even know what I'm going to title this today. Summer sucks, but you can use the time to your advantage. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a happy week. I still will be doing Facebook Live on Friday, you guys. If you're in the States and you're celebrating 4th of July, happy 4th to all of you. If you're not in the States, have a happy week. Okay? All right, y'all.